Blessings to you, this Imbolc or Imbolg or Imbolc. So people pronounce it different ways. The traditional ways is Imbolg, which is I-M-O-L-G is how it's pronounced. The modern day in North America, most people pronounce it Imbolc with a B and a C, I-M-B-O-L-C, as it's spelt. And some people will also call it Imbolc, which is I-M-0, no B's, O-L-C, and keep the B silent. Of course, whatever is comfortable for you to say and to connect with is how you should pronounce it for yourself. So yes, blessings to you on this Imbolc. I'm really excited to do this video. I thought it's really important for people to know what this day and celebration is all about. Traditionally, it's done February 1st to February 2nd, and it's known as the White Goddess Brigit's Day. So it's known as Brigit's Day. Modern day religions created a Saint Brigid's Day. However, I believe in the old pagan ancient ways. To me, Christianity and Catholicism, I consider those also modern day religions. So yeah. So let's go into the history of Imbolc and the wheel in the Wheel of the Year. So Imbolc is also known as Candlemass, Imbolc, and it's traditionally February 2nd. A lot of people say it's also pronounced in the old ancient way, E-Molc, which is pronounced like double E-M-O-L-C. So this holiday is also known as Candlemas or Brigid's or Breed Day. And it's one of the 4 Celtic fire festivals of the Wheel of the Year. And actually, in this celebration, we honor the changing of the goddess, and she goes from the crone to the maiden. And it's the celebration of the first signs of spring. This is a seasonal change where the first signs of spring and the return of the sun are coming about. And we will get to start to see the first sprouting of the leaves or crocuses. I'm on the east coast of Canada, so for us, we're like the very last to get to see crocuses. BC has, tulips and everything by the time we get our crocuses. So for us here on the east coast in Canada, it can be a little later. For us this year, I do believe we're gonna have an early spring, so that's really cool. Yeah, it hasn't been as cold. But this is a festival where we are happily going past winter. And it's actually the beginning of the agricultural year. So this time marks the transition point of the 3-fold goddess energies. That's from those of the crone to the maiden. And it's on this day that we celebrate the passing of winter and we make way for spring. It's the day where we honor the rebirth of the sun, and we may also visualize the baby son nursing from the goddess. A lot of people will get visions of that. It's a day of celebrating the Celtic goddess Brigid. Brigid is the goddess of poetry, healing, midwifery, smithcraft, and if you do try to tap into writing or journaling or poetry, or if you do divination or any work with your hands, including crafting, through this month, it is said that Brigid rules it. So Brigid is also known as a white goddess. She's also known as a bride and a lady, but she is a triple goddess, and we honor her in all of these aspects. This is a time for communing with her and tending to the sacred flame, and the whole part of the sacred flame comes from the lighting of it. So on Imbolc, we like to make sure we have candles lit, because it's the time of year where we will light many candles. And they're usually white for Bridget. We can also use orange or red, or yellow or red. So any of those colors are good. But this is a time where we are reminded of the passing of winter and the entrance into spring, the time of the sun. So it's a good time, and it's a traditional time for initiations. If you are involved with a coven, my covens do their initiations on Imbolc, and it's also a good time to do self-dedication rituals. And so the second marks the recovery of the goddess after giving birth to the god. And it's also the periods where light is awakening in her. Okay? So the warmth of this god energy that is now coming out fertilizes the earth, the goddess, and causes seeds to germinate and sprout. And it's also where we get to start to feel the temperature of the winter not as harsh, so it starts to get warmer. It is a Sabbath of purification, and it is because, you know, when we go into the darkness of the winter, that is a time where we need to focus on who we authentically are. So much insight comes to us, and we're shedding all of the things that no longer serve us. We're being prepared for this time, and we have been getting prepared for this ritual. Naturally, many people will do purifying and planning up until this time. And when Imbolc comes around, that's where we start to step into the power of manifestation and the path that is ahead of us in the new year. So for us, for my Coventry and many people, when we work before Imbolc, we understand that the power of creation takes place in darkness. And once creation starts to take place, it is a comprehension that we receive in manifestation. And so that comprehension of who we truly are takes place through the winter. Whether we are carrying old stuff and stuck in a certain consciousness, or whether we are excited and it's easy to let go of the stuff that no longer serves us. And the reason why it is so powerful when we come out of this time is because most of us are excited and have visions for the new year. And we can start to feel that energy, that goddess energy, and the brightness of the sky and the warmth of the sun. And it is true that we will feel the warmth of the sun. So this is a time where we like to do purification to make sure that we're not walking into our creation and our cycle of manifestation that is now starting the day of Imbolg, going to start manifesting our path. So it's a super sacred time. If you are someone that is spiritual, and if you are interested in witchcraft or practicing as a witch, these celebrations that we do are so important because we learn about how we are connecting to that aspect of nature. So everything that the trees are doing, we are also doing. We are an element and a force of nature. And we honor that in our life by flowing with it and holding the energies of what we're focusing on and what we desire. And we hope and we rejoice in knowing that we are connected to the goddess by what we create, not just creating children, but creating everything that we love, because the goddess's energy is about desire and it's about existence. So Imbolc, it does scientifically mark the in-between of the winter solstice and the spring equinox. And we will traditionally create a feast honoring our survival and all of the preparations and the guidance and the actions that we receive for our new year in the spring. It's also a time where we believe in fairy magic, and it's important because it teaches us how to believe in something without an existence. And so that is just like all of these elemental spirits. It's also just like our abilities. Our abilities, a lot of our abilities, and people, spiritual people who are gifted, their abilities don't actually like exist. It's not something that you can go and grab. The same with our healing abilities and our bodies, right? All of these things are happening without our consciousness anyway. So it's really neat to believe in something without its existence, and that is part of magic. You have to believe it. If you don't believe in the power of manifestation and the way to it, then how can you be magical? Because magic is about bringing something into existence with your power, your gifts, and your abilities. And that's why, yeah, anyone can call themselves a witch, but are they really? What's their ability? Witches, true witches, have ability, and they understand how to create the life that they want and love with this natural power. So it is, and why we do an initiation for Imbolc is because we are opening to receive good things, and we're giving ourselves faith and connection and energy to the frequency that will bring us the goodness of our wholeness. It will provide and connect with us, co-create, and it's all about personal development. That's what, that's what magic is about. The other thing that's really traditional is finding a piece of birch, going for a walk in the trees, because the birch wand is, this is the time to gather one of the sacred woods. And we'll put it by our bed so that we can receive dreams and connection from the goddess. And it is said that the birch wand that you find, or the birch piece that you find, was guided to you with the nature spirits. Traditionally, the birch piece is something that we find that's already been shed and laying on the ground. So it is more magical to find it instead of, cutting it off a tree and putting an offering for it. And if you are going to cut a tree, you better put an offering for that tree. The other thing is the Bridget's cross. I make a Bridget cross for my house every single day, and I'll be posting videos on how to do that. But it also represents her, and it also represents the magic that's behind it, protection and the acknowledgement that we are working with her. The other thing we like to do is we have our feast. And we, of course, give an offering, a feast plate to the spirits outside. We also will visit a holy well or holy water. And we do that because there's power that will bless us and give us a heightened divination connection. This is also a time for spring cleaning. So for right now, when we spring clean our house, when we get rid of all of the clutter and the clothes that we don't feel great in, or anything that's just lethargic or stagnant, if we get rid of that and do spring cleaner, it actually adds power and clarity to our atmosphere, to our environment, to our home right now. So doing spring cleaning right now to prepare for Imbolc and carrying it through until the full moon is something as well. The other thing we like to do is, of course, have a fire. So if you have candles, but if you are able to have a bonfire outside, we like to do a big Imbolc bonfire. And after, we will spread some of the ashes and just see if we get a sign or a message from it. There's a few other things that we do for Imbolc that is Coventry and that our spiritual community will practice. And so I'm not going to get into some of our traditional magic. The things that I'm talking about are general. But at Imbolc, and usually during sunset or just after sunset, it's traditional to light a candle in the house. A lot of people will actually light a candle in every room of the house, and it doesn't have to be lit all night, but only until you actually see the auric flame from the candle. If you see an energy around the candle flame, you're magical. And so we do this to honor each room in to honor the goddess and also the sun's rebirth. So by doing this, it will bring us protection and clearing and purification in our home. Other things that we like to involve and have in our ritual is also having, you know, a container of snow. So Imbolc is known as a pagan holiday, and it's actually based on a Celtic tradition. And Imbolc was meant to mark the halfway point between winter solstice and the spring equinox. And this is in Neolithic Ireland and Scotland. The holiday is celebrated by Wiccans and other practitioners of neo-pagan or pagan-influenced beliefs. Imbolc is just one of the several pre-Christian holidays that's highlighting some aspect of winter and sun and also the change of season into spring. So this celebration actually dates back to pre-Christian era in the British Isles, which is awesome because I'm actually from the Eastern British Isles and Yorkshire. Either way. My British name is Kay. I love that too, but either way, I'm gonna move on. The earliest mentions of Imbolc in Irish literature dates back to the 10th century. Poetry from that time relates the holiday to use milk, and it was a time of and used for purification. It's also speculated that this stems from the breeding cycle of sheep and the beginning of lactation. but the holiday was traditionally aligned with the first day of spring and the idea of rebirth. Imbolc celebrations took the form of a festival in honor of the pagan goddess Brigid, who was evoked for fertility rites and guiding and overseeing poetry and writing and crafts and receiving prophecy. So Imbolc for me, after I finish my ceremony with my spiritual community, I always do divination, because that is a time where I receive personal prophecy. And if you do this every year and create a tradition with Imbolc, you'll be able to see how it actually influences and affects your life. So Brigid was actually worshipped by the Felid, and it is a class of poets and historians that were among the Celts of ancient Ireland and Britain. Brigid was considered one of the most powerful Celtic goddesses, the daughter of Dagda, and the oldest god of the Celtic pantheon. Oh, I just can't even go there. I love it. I need to do a video in the future about this. But Bridget actually had two sisters whose names were Brigid. So it's speculated that all three of these sisters were called Bridget and are meant to symbolize the different aspects of the same goddess. Brigid started to appear strongly in history of Ireland and was written about in various poems and texts in the 10th century. But the myths about Brigid's birth say that she was born with a flame in her head and drank the milk of a mystical cow from the spirit world. So Brigid is credited with the very first keening, a traditional wailing for the dead practiced at funerals by Irish and Scottish women. In pre-Christian times, Imbolc began the night before February 1st, and it was celebrated for a visit from Brigid into their homes by crafting an effigy of the goddess from bundles of oats and rushes. It was placed in a dress and put in a basket overnight. The day of Imbolc was celebrated by burning lamps and lighting bonfires in her tribute. And over the centuries, Brigid was adopted into Christianity as Saint Brigid, one of Ireland's 3 patron saints. The Catholic Church claims that Saint Brigid was a historical person with accounts of her life written by monks dating back to the 8th century, and is the patron saint of Irish nuns, newborns, midwives, dairymaids, and cattle. Some say that she didn't actually exist, but all of these stories and all of these legends, they all have details of the pagan goddess, and they also illustrate a transition from pagan to Christianity worship. So like the goddess Brigid, Saint Brigid was associated with milk and fire, born in Ireland around 453 AD. Saint Brigid was a daughter of a slave and a chieftain who was celebrated at an early age for her agricultural knowledge. With no interest in marrying, Brigid's goal was to create a monastery in Kildare, supposedly the former site of a shrine to the Celtic goddess of the same name. Brigid lived her entire life there. She was renowned for her charity to the poor, and stories abound about her healing powers. Saint Brigid was a friend of Saint Patrick, whose preaching set her on a course at an early age, and she became Ireland's first nun. Saint Brigid is said to have died in 524 AD. The remains of her skull and hands are claimed to be in the possession of churches in Portugal. In the 12th century, legendary holds that the nuns of Kildare attended to a fire built in St. Brigid's honor. The fire had burned for 500 years and produced no ash, and only women were allowed in the area of the fire. The celebration of St. Brigid's Day on February 1st was put in place by the church to replace Imbolc. And on her feast day, an effigy of St. Brigid of Kildare is traditionally washed in the ocean and surrounded by candles to dry, and stalks of wheat are transformed into cross talismans known as Brigid's crosses. The modern celebration of Imbolc is considered pretty low-key. It's loose and sometimes a private affair, but it's all concerned with reconnecting with nature. Since it's a climate-specific holiday, some followers of the Wiccan religion adjust their celebration of it to correspond with a date more appropriate of the coming spring where they live. Others embrace the symbolism of the holiday and keep to the February 1st tradition. But Imbolc actually comes from the Irish people, the Scottish people, the Manx people, and the Celtic neo-pagans, witches, and Wiccans. And it is considered a cultural pagan celebration. And its significance is the beginning of spring. The word Imbolc, and the most common explanation is that it comes from the Old Irish, Imbolg, meaning in the belly, and refers to the pregnancy of ewes. Another possible origin is the Old Irish Imbolc, to wash or cleanse oneself, referring to a ritual cleansing. Some say that it derives from a Proto-Indo-European root, meaning both milk and cleansing. Some say it derives from the Proto-Celtic Imbolgan, budding, and the 10th century Olmec, ewe milk. And I probably am saying all of those words wrong. I kind of have a prairie girl Canadian accent, so it's really difficult for me to learn different languages, but I am going to learn Gaelic. That is something I want to learn. So pardon my pronunciations. In Gaelic Ireland, Imbolc was the festival and the beginning of spring, during which great feasts were held. It is also attested in some of the earliest Old English literature from the 10th century onward that it was one of 4 Gaelic festivals: Samhain, Imbolc, Beltane, and Lunasa. From the 8th century to the mid-18th century to the mid-20th century, many accounts of Imbolc or St. Brigid's Day were recorded by folklorists and other writers. They tell us how it was celebrated then and shed light on how it may have been celebrated in the past. In Wicca, Imbolc is commonly associated with the goddess Brigid, and as such, it is sometimes seen as a woman's holiday with specific rites only for female members of the Coven. Imbolc is a traditional time for initiations. So the goddess Brigid is central to the celebrations for modern Wiccans or witches. In the tradition of the original Celtic festival, Wiccan groups that worship Brigid might include fire rituals on Imbolc. Traditions from both the pagan celebration of Imbolc and the Christian celebration of St. Brigid's Day can be found in the modern Imbolc celebration. People that celebrate sometimes make a Bridget's cross out of reeds as well as a Brigid corn doll. Now, traditionally, our Coventry creates the corn doll during Lunasa, and then we burn it during Imbolc. A little about Candlemas. Candlemas is a Christian history or a holiday that is celebrated on February 2nd and has aspects in common with Imbolc. Celebration is actually traced to the 4th century Greece as a purification holiday and a celebration of the return of light. Groundhog Day in North America is February 2nd and is celebrated with that began in the United States in 1887. The idea is that the groundhog existing its burrow can predict whether winter will stay or go based on the weather the groundhog sees its shadow. The day was a stunt by a newspaper in Pennsylvania that has endured. Groundhog Day is believed to be the adaptation of a German Candlemas tradition involving a badger. There have been many attempts to portray Groundhog Day as a modern offshoot of Imbolc, but the 2 days are not directly related. Imbolc was traditionally a time of weather divination and the old tradition of watching to see if serpents or badgers came from their winter dens. The serpent, this is an old Gaelic proverb. The serpent will come from the hole on the brown day of bride, though there should be 3 feet of snow on the flat surface of the ground. So Imbolc was believed to be when Callie, the divine hag of Gaelic traditions, gather her firewood for the rest of the winter. Legend has it that if she wishes to make the winter last a good while longer, she will make sure the weather on Imbolc is bright and sunny so that she can gather plenty of firewood. Therefore, people would be relieved if Imbolc is a day of foul weather because it means that Kaylee was asleep and winter is almost over. At Imbolc on the Isle of Man, where she is known as Kaylee, she is said to take form of a gigantic bird which carries sticks in her beak. So that is some pretty interesting information. One of the things that we like to say as well is when we will cast a circle and we will say something that is like this. This is the time of the Feast of Torches, when every lamp blazes and shines. To welcome the rebirth of the god, we celebrate the goddess, we celebrate the god. All the earth celebrates beneath its mantle of sleep. We light an orange candle from the red candle on the altar and walk in a circle clockwise. While you're holding the candle, say, all the land is wrapped in winter. The air is chilled and frost envelops the earth. But Lord of the Sun, horned one of animal and wild places, unseen, you have been reborn of the gracious Mother Goddess, Lady of all fertility. Great God, welcome. Great Goddess, welcome. So mote it be. So, as I mentioned, this is a day where people will practice divination. And on this day, you can actually look into the past or the future. So if you have answers that, you know, you gotta get so that you can move on, this is the time to do that. As far as incenses and aromas, rosemary, frankincense, myrrh, and cinnamon are traditional herbs. I hope you enjoyed this audio, and yeah, many blessings to you. May your creations this year be blessed with the power of Bridget. Many blessings to you. Thank you for listening. If you want to learn more, like my video and subscribe to my channel. Thank you. Bye-bye.